Rob Grimes with the IFBTA. And today I'm very pleased to introduce in our Meet Our Member series, Dave Demlow, the VP of Product Strategy for Scale Computing, who is an allied premier member of the IFBTA. So welcome to the IFBTA and welcome, Dave.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks very much for having me.
So listen, we're going to have a conversation, but any conversation needs to start with sort of the right introductions, right? So why don't you give us an overview of where scale computing is, the products and services that you offer, and just how you fit within specifically the food and beverage industries.
Sure. Yeah. So Scale Computing is a provider of IT solutions that really focus on some of the unique problems of what we call edge environments, which food services definitely falls into. How do you run both legacy applications that are critical to ongoing operations and prepare your businesses for being able to deploy and rapidly take advantages of new IT driven solutions that may require cloud integration, may incorporate AI, may improve customer experience. You need an IT infrastructure platform that can support those, be remotely managed, deal with the particular environments that we see in food service and so forth, and that's really one of the things that Scale has.
So when we talk about edge,
Yeah.
because you've said that obviously food service falls within it. Can you go ahead? So what I'm learning
Yep.
is that we could have that conversation about AI, and I could ask like three people, and there's going to be three different definitions of what
Sure.
AI
Yeah.
is, right? So let's go ahead and assume that the audience is not all just IT people, but it's a lot of operational people who are
Sure.
making decisions or finance. So very specifically, can we just sort of talk about when we say that food service fits within an edge environment, what we're
Sure.
talking about?
Yeah, we actually have, I think, a really simple definition. It's anything that's not the public cloud. So anything that you're not running on external somebody else's servers, computers. If you have to own that infrastructure, you have to maintain that infrastructure, you have to deploy the hardware, you have to deal with hardware break fix operations, things like that. And then in particular, you're doing it outside a big managed data center that you can have a team of IT people go and pull out a hard drive. If it's distributed locations. Without IT professionals in most cases, that's what we refer to as edge environments.
But in today's environment, people within food service, first of all, there's a lot of different technologies that deploy. So when we take a look at it, we have what's in the four walls,
Yeah.
which we're starting to learn is everything is connected within the four walls. They never used to think about the kitchen equipment,
Yeah.
and maybe the facilities people think about the HVAC and things like that, but everything in the four walls. And then we have above store, and above store are going to be the applications, according to the definition, that a company is actually running for themselves, probably hosting themselves.
Okay.
And then you have all the connections that they're doing to the outside world. Have I described that properly?
Yeah. It's all those things, and then it's the new applications that your business units are going to come and say, we need to deploy this new thing as fast as possible. How quickly can you deploy this new customer service application or this new kiosk type thing, and all those things? Yeah.
So there's a lot of different technologies in use in the industry, and there's a lot of people that actually talk about needing to be able to manage, and control and secure, all of the data and all the applications and systems in there. And I think people may get confused from time to time. And I remember the early days in the food service industry where people said, we're not retail, we're not hotel, we're food service, we're different. Now, maybe I might argue with them that some of the cases are the same, but you can't tell them that. So how does Scale differentiate itself from others when it's offering its products, services, or approach to the industry?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very broad question. There's obviously key technology differentiators. Like we built a product that assumes resiliency is important to you. You're not just going to buy one application, put it on one box, cross your fingers. So we built a platform that's inherently resilient, and a key is autonomous. It doesn't require someone or even an internet connection to sit there and make.
So you don't have to be a tech person to manage it. It just sits behind there, and then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's designed to, once you've deployed your set of applications on it, to keep them up and running. Another key aspect is it provides consolidation. So the ultimate goal is it lets you take all of these different kinds of applications and put them on one resilient, easily managed and updated platform so that you don't have to, worry about different life cycles. This old 10-year-old PC is about ready to fall over and I've got this one that's new. You can kind of move all those onto one centrally managed platform. That's a key differentiator. I'd say, outside of the technology, the other aspect is that we do very much focus on partnerships and the ecosystem for unique solutions. So for example, for food service, we do partner with the IoT stack that can gather data from all the various equipment, from the solution providers that might be deploying the latest AI machine learning application out to those, to the other software vendors, to the networking vendors. We try to establish relationships and where necessary technical integration to provide a very complete solution
So
that's
that
easy to manage.
Well, that word integration is the thing I think that scares most people because, I constantly go online and I take a look at charts in the hospitality industry, retail, and food service industry that show all those bubbles and all the applications that sit out there.
Yeah.
And if I were sitting there as an operator and especially an emerging brand, I'd be looking at this and saying, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with this and how am I going to do it? And sometimes, by the way, you have some people that do an all-in-one approach,
Yep.
and some best of breed,
Yep.
and then sometimes best of breed is not all in one, but
Right.
and they look at it and they say maybe I need to do the all in one, and maybe they're giving up something because they feel they can't do best of breed. So how do you actually bring all those things in and take out the fear of the word integration?
Yeah. Right. Integration shouldn't mean lock in. I mean, it should mean flexibility, so forth. Without getting too deep into the technology, there's two key things that our platform provides that provide that flexibility and take away that fear. So one is a technology called server virtualization, and that's basically what lets us kind of lift and shift all these different things, make your applications hardware independent, let you take an application that you're comfortable with an ecosystem or a software vendor, and lift and shift it onto a new resilient managed platform and get the benefits that come from that.
And the word there was virtualization.
Virtualization.
So you're talking about a virtual server.
Yes. Yeah. So a virtual server, so you no longer have hardware lock-in. You can get the latest, hardware benefits, the latest performance, get resiliency, so forth. Another similar technology is called containerization. So you can containerize your applications, make them very portable. Both of those things let you build and develop a unified platform for supporting all these different applications. So as opposed to having to do various point solutions where you're doing a lot of that integration and or a particular vendor is like putting piece A with piece B and testing that they continue to work. Virtualization and containerization give you that kind of portability.
But who's responsible for connecting the dots between the different applications, the different vendors, and then bringing it together in the containers and then bringing it together in the virtual server?
Sure. Yeah. And there's no easy answer. It's everybody. I mean, it's everybody in that ecosystem, which is why it's important to have, organizations like this that foster those relationships and interoperability. But there are standards, there are well-defined interfaces like virtualization that kind of abstracts, physical hardware from your application that creates a number of benefits. There's standards in terms of, IoT type data communication to let application A talk to application B and share data. And by the way, I mean, while we're focusing on edge computing, much of this ultimately does go up to some kind of cloud-based solution as well. So you're also integrating at that level as well. It's a full hybrid solution. But following standards, providing flexibility is really a lot of the key there.
But the important thing here is anybody who'd be listening to this is saying, oh my gosh, and they're hearing these terms and things that are being used, but really it simplifies the process. If you're a food service operator, and I know sometimes that little light bulb goes on above their head and they go figure this thing out, even the biggest of them. Yeah. And they say, at the end of the day, we're not technology companies, even though sometimes they invest in them. Yeah. We're serving food, right? And so when you're talking about these standards and the pieces that are there, that is actually what you're bringing to the table that they don't have to worry about.
Right.
Because those pieces and you're going to make sure the parts and pieces that they're putting together that you're bringing together are actually protected and that they're part of those standards. It's not they should know about it, but they don't have to worry about it.
Right, right. And they don't have to design in certain things like, oh, how do I maintain resiliency for this application? How do I, maintain network connectivity from this application to a cloud or to, some other component? That all just kind of becomes part of the infrastructure. That's something that we handle for them, as well as critical things like how do you even deploy these things in the first place? How do you update them? How do you handle failures when one, hardware piece ultimately does fail? How do you handle that in an efficient way that isn't, a fire drill, roll a truck with an expensive IT person? How can you, maintain the application running?
Not only what to do when it happens, but
Right.
how to predict it in advance
When
by
possible. Yeah.
monitoring the
Yeah. A lot
system.
of it is,
Well, because you said you're monitoring the IoT,
yeah.
all the connected devices. So also that's the other side of this, is to try to be preventive,
Right.
in what happens, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. I mean, and then being able to, when you start talking about predictive analytics, things like that, there's a big life cycle of how do you get better at that and improve your models and deploy those new models, and kind of that continuous iteration loop of making those things better.
So if you're trying to take a look at how you simplify the infrastructure and you support, the workload convergence that's there and manage multiple locations and on premise, and I'm going to just add to it franchisees, franchisors
Yep.
who may be operating their stuff right. How would you actually, or what is the benefit that you're bringing to the table? Is it that they have one person to deal with that's going to go ahead and be the central point between all those parties and coordinate it?
That would be one we like to say it's kind of one throat to choke, one back to pat. We can
I'm,
provide
I'm
that.
not. I'm not. I like the back one back to pat.
Yeah.
I got that. I was avoiding the other one,
Yeah.
just to be very clear about that. Okay.
Yes, exactly. But yes, it is, from the infrastructure standpoint, we do want to be able to provide the whole solution, provide scalability. That's another unique aspect of our product, that here's what you need today. You can buy the resources you need to run those applications today. We make it very easy to add new infrastructure and expand your capabilities,
Exactly.
down the line, and you don't have to guess or predict or buy it all up front, so it's all part of that platform design. That's a key aspect. But yes, we handle all the infrastructure, we handle the monitoring, the maintenance, make that very simple, give you resiliency out of the box, make the deployments and upgrades are a key things, making sure that you're keeping up on critical security patches, new functionality.
Is it going to save somebody money?
Absolutely, yeah. If you think about the number of truck rolls you might have to do to in an emergency to handle failed hardware. If you think about the IT staff of trying to do these things manually, we take all those away, and also save money by providing predictable deployment. So basically set up a set of templates or rules or policies. These are the applications. These are how they should be configured. And then we basically push those out and deploy those for you, and make sure that everything meets your desired state at that point.
So if we take a look at this in the world of food service operations, is there a particular sweet spot or size of company that you guys work with?
It's really one of the things is we have, from a device standpoint, down to very, very small form factor devices and that just run a couple applications, to large clusters of, 2U GPU loaded applications. If you're doing, video analytics, things like that. So the same solution can support all those things. So we really do have a range. We have our systems deployed in things from mobile food trucks, up to very large, data center environments.
So what we're talking, just to be clear on that,
Yeah.
so what we're talking about here in number of units or size is you actually could be deployed working with independents
Mhm.
and small SMBs all the way up to the very large
Exactly.
enterprise.
Right.
And global as well?
Global as well. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, so if we take a look at that, one person can't have all those touch points directly. So is some of that done through partners that may be selling it, or are you selling directly to each of those ones from the independent on up?
We're a channel focused company, so we're always working through a multi-tiered distribution channel. Vertical integrators, managed service providers are very very important part. So we have a number of our end customers who even want to have an intermediary that's doing the monitoring and management. They want somebody who's looking at their fleet of systems, their fleet of stores, their applications, handling that for them. So in many cases, it is a service that companies are consuming based on our technology. That's an important part of the ecosystem. But And then also often there are solution software providers involved as well, or network providers. We work with all of those in the end to make sure that there's a coherent ecosystem for
Could
the end
we
customer.
could we say in the technology ecosystem of multi-unit operations that Scale has relationships with most of the application providers and services providers?
Yes, yeah, absolutely, and I mean some of the key areas would be in the networking space, point of sale vendors, all those types of common applications, and then we do see the need to deploy in-house developed applications very often as well, and we can provide the integration point and the API to automate the deployment of those types of applications as well.
Well, just putting you on the spot, or I'll just tell you why I
Yeah.
actually asked that question, because I had coffee this morning with a multi-unit independent, 10 units, and we're having this conversation about how they select and put in systems,
Yeah.
right? And I said to them, you need to make sure that your connection point of what you're putting in, you shouldn't be worried about that,
Mhm.
of how they're going to work together. Now,
Right.
maybe selecting the applications, they need to worry about who's connected to who.
Yeah.
But when it actually comes to managing that process in the network, actually they could just depend on you to go ahead and do that, because you're going to have those points with almost everybody out there.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And then again, to depending on the degree that they want to do the day-to-day management in-house or work with a service provider, we have a network of resources that can help in either of those cases.
Well, and I think that that's very important that when people understand there is a channel, because I've talked about that on our podcast before, and that understanding that there's a channel of people that actually know your business,
Mhm.
especially when you're in a region or something like that, they understand the other pieces and they're helping you to put them together, knowing that on this particular side of it, they can go through that channel of expertise, they can come through the vendor, they can work with you, and that's a number of different ways
Yeah.
that somebody could, actually connect. That's probably a good word,
Yeah.
connect with Scale. So let's talk about deployment, because you've said that a number of times here. So how would you impact the speed of deployment? Because I know companies that, might do 100 units in a week,
Yeah.
or something, if they're really doing a major deployment. But how can you impact how quickly somebody can deploy, once they make the decision to move forward?
Right. Well. So there's kind of two cases, and we handle both. I mean, so one is say it's kind of a greenfield deployment, or it's a mass migration. We're going to go and we need to deploy net new infrastructure, maybe lift and shift existing applications. We provide as part of our overall platform what's called zero touch provisioning. So you can, even before stuff has left the loading dock on its way out to a store, you can pre-provision everything you need about that site.
Right.
I mean, to where in a lot of cases, you don't even need IT people to show up on site. You take devices that are basically like plugging in a laptop. It's a power cable, an Ethernet cable, plug them in, they phone home to our fleet manager system, get their instructions, they cluster themselves together, they deploy the applications that you need to deploy. That's kind of one scenario to get, onto our platform initially. The more common scenario is, and I've mentioned a couple of times, is you've got a new application that you need to deploy. And now with scale computing, instead of that becoming we got to figure out what hardware we're going to use. We got to order it. We got to
Right.
go through
You've got the
pilots.
infrastructure in place and you just
Yeah.
deploy it.
Now you've got a platform and all the capabilities to say, all right, I'm going to test it in these couple locations. I'm going to push that out, test not only the application, but my deployment. And then when you're ready to push the button and deploy that across your entire fleet or certain classes of stores, you just go, and you've got the resources that are already there. And then again, this is kind of an evergreen platform. Let's say that you all of a sudden you want to deploy this new application that requires GPU and a ton of storage and things like that. We have nodes that can be deployed out with that same kind of zero touch provisioning, join an existing cluster, and all of a sudden your on premises infrastructure now has those net new capabilities.
Well, that's right. So that's one of the things, and I want to just make sure that this is very clear. So first of all, we live in an environment today where people are constantly being bombarded by new applications that they need to put in, and sometimes they're forced on us by the customers who want new different applications. Sometimes they're forced on us by circumstances like COVID. Sometimes they come out. And sometimes we just come up with new and better ways, or there's upgrades and things that we want to do. We also have that problem and challenge of having too many choices. And basically what you're saying is we can make this deployment much easier for you, so you don't really have to think about how you're going to get it out there, which the more hands, the longer it takes, and you need to get this out there.
Yeah.
But B, you also are giving them the choice to be able to select the best of breed or all in one,
Yeah.
because you choose it, but we can handle either one. It really does give them some flexibility to do what's best for their business. And on top of it, you're saying, you know what? If you want to have somebody manage your IT, great. You want to manage it, great. But in the middle of it, what they don't have to worry about is what you're bringing to the table, because you're bringing the parts and pieces together.
Yeah, exactly. And in the end, I mean, that lets them focus on the areas that do provide value, the applications, things like that. Nobody gains value by picking a server platform or, an operating system there or things like
Well,
that.
that's true.
But it's all a necessary evil. Somebody has to do that. Somebody has to patch those. Somebody has to, keep that infrastructure up and running and expand it and grow it and handle hard drive failures and, all the mundane things. We make that easy so that you can focus on the application side of things.
And running your business.
And run your business, yeah.
Right, because you may not be IT people, right? So you may be focusing on just using those applications and not even necessarily supporting them. And I don't want that to be lost, because that outsourcing is certainly a very big area that people take a look at. So let me just shift gears a little bit. Tell me a little bit about your history, with the company and also in the industry.
Sure. Yeah. So I've been with Scale Computing 14 years now, mostly in product roles, product management, product strategy, but from the initial development of this overall platform, what we call hyperconvergence. You can Google it if you want to nerd out, but it's kind of that all-in-one, piece. Prior to that, I worked for a company called Double Take Software that did data replication, kind of offsite. If you and this is more for larger central data centers.
Right.
If you lose a data center, how do you fail over? But so kind of my line is, my whole career has pretty much been making copies of stuff. Providing backups and redundancy and resiliency, and keeping applications running.
But I'm pretty sure you probably eat out, right?
I do eat out. Yes. Yeah.
So I'm curious. You weren't necessarily specifically focused on the food service and restaurant industry, but yet this is a main focus and why you're investing in this industry for scale.
Yeah.
So, is there anything that surprised you about the industry as you've gotten to know it? And how do you actually get to understand the industry, so when you're working with people, they're comfortable that not only you personally, but your team and scale, understand what's happening within food service?
Yeah. It's a great question. I will say we had a number of customers that had pretty extreme needs, aggressive timelines, really wanted to use technology to push the edge. And, we were able to kind of, jointly develop the overall solutions, round out things in our platform that might have, not been exactly what this particular industry needed. For example, on the zero touch deployment was one of the key things. Like, we don't want to send highly trained IT people out, to every one of these stores. There's a whole lot of them, things like that. So we had some really good partners, customer partners that worked with us on, all right, I know you guys are really good at this. These are our unique needs. How can we help jointly develop and bridge?
And by the way, franchisees never want to pay for travel to bring people in.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Franchisees are interesting because, we've had a couple of cases where we had some corporate entities who became so dependent on our product. It was, they decided it was lower cost for them to provide our infrastructure to their franchisees for free, because it saved them on support costs and better experience and better profitability and so forth. So we have some very great initial development partners in this space and we are willing to do this with anyone. What are your unique needs?
By the way, wait, hang on. Yeah. I do not want to miss that particular point, because I've had this conversation with people before about providing the infrastructure and products such as this at no charge to them, because it's almost like saying, you cannot actually operate and you can't deploy the other things that the company wants to do that customers expect unless it's there. So you're putting in the backbone and the infrastructure to do it quickly, easily, which, by the way, also includes training and all kinds of other things that you're doing. So that makes a lot of sense for a company perhaps to put it in there. Also, your little comment earlier about evergreening, I think makes a lot of sense too, because you constantly are changing, upgrading applications. If you don't have great oxygen coming into the place to begin with, you're not going to be able to do that.
It's definitely fast moving. And I'd say in terms of things that surprised me, I would say I initially was very surprised at how aggressive the food service industry was on adopting new technology. Just the number of use cases. I mean, more than I'd say in other areas of retail where it was just essential to the business to, from monitoring, the hardware infrastructure to optimizing drive-through operations. I mean, there was just so many opportunities. Maybe a lot of it due to kind of labor issues of to use technology to optimize certain use cases. From online ordering. Just I mean, so many more opportunities. Well, basically everything you see in other retailers exists, within the food service technology space and more. Like a lot of just
and
leading.
and and it's a manufacturing plant
It is, yeah.
on
It's a
top of
process
it because you're actually,
manufacturing. Yeah.
you're doing it, right there. So then, okay, you work in other industries
Yeah.
and you work globally. So are there some observations or learnings or things that you believe that the food service industry should or could be taking advantage of through your observation? If you said to them, "Hey, I've seen this here or there, they do this right. Here's something you could do."
Yeah. I mean, probably the big observation is I do think you need to look at your entire edge estate, all these locations, all this IT and the cloud integrations as a complete platform. You cannot make decisions on a store by store, location by location piece. Obvious things like you need to have standardization at some level. Doesn't mean every piece of hardware has to be exactly the same, but you need to have a standard way of managing that. You need to have a standard way of deploying new applications. So you really do have to have a platform view. I do think it's important to, to a large degree, don't try to predict the future and buy what you think you're going to need because you're going to be wrong. I mean, I think you're better to plan for, plan for rapid deployment, so rapid deployment of applications, rapid upgrade of applications. If that requires new infrastructure, you want to know how you want to have a plan in place. And again, as part of your platform that supports that. I mean, and some of these things, like if you look at like a public cloud as the alternative, all that just happens for free. It is a platform. It's easy to, deploy a new
Right.
application when you need to. You don't care about what the hardware is that's sitting under the hood. Somebody else deals with all that for you. And when, something goes down, you kind of just assume resiliency. You can get and build that same kind of platform, technology platform and management layer across your edge estate as well.
The interesting thing about that, though, and that a lot of people don't know, is there are some debates going on. You mentioned public cloud, but there are public applications that people use, especially in social media.
Okay.
And a lot of companies in our industry are now considering whether they should host and actually control that data themselves instead of having, that information sitting with somebody else.
Yeah.
In there, especially when it comes to loyalty, customer comments, and things like that. So that's going to be more and more of applications we're going to actually be hosting and managing ourselves.
Yes, yeah, and I think I mean food service has many applications that meet one of the number one requirements for needing to run on the edge versus running in the cloud, which is you need instantaneous decisions. You can't even wait milliseconds for you can't necessarily depend on the network, but you can't wait milliseconds for a whole bunch of high resolution data, video, IoT telemetry to go off to some public cloud, crunch some numbers, send a response back because it's too late. You need applications that run autonomously on-prem that have access to huge volumes of data that can make, millisecond, microsecond even decisions.
What a great point you're making there, because as I think about it, anybody who can look at historical, I remember as people started talking about integrating credit card transactions into the point of sale, the problem was that in retail, you could actually wait for the transaction to happen, 15 seconds, 20 seconds. You try doing that on a quick service counter, and
Yeah.
they're sitting there
People
saying,
backed up in the drive-through
freeze it.
line or, yeah.
Now, they don't think about that anymore because a lot of that has already been, unless your interface is down, but a lot of that has been cured. But what's the next application that needs the instantaneous? And it may be recognizing the customer, doing their preferences. There's any number of things there we're just not even thinking about. But what you have said all along is that if they deploy scale in there, and I love this because you can scale, right? So if they deploy it, you have the opportunity to add and grow as you need to. You don't need to put that in all up front.
Right. Or try to guess what you need up front. Yeah. That's like, yeah.
And I like that. I bet people don't think about that. So if we talk about what some of these other industries are doing from your experience, what are the trends that you're seeing in the food service industry that are trends that the operators are figuring out their trends, but that scale computing is helping to evolve to meet these future trends and demands?
Sure. I mean, high level stuff. A lot of things, involving video. High resolution, imagery, video for just a variety of use cases. Whether it's customer detection, improving drive through, monitoring freshness, on ingredients, things like that. A lot of stuff around that. A lot of that feeds into some kind of AI, and usually it's just the inference piece. So you're doing constant inference, using, commodity GPUs, not super fancy, expensive stuff in most cases, to be able to do those kind of, instantaneous decision making, taking actions autonomously in the education in the stores. A lot of things there. We're starting to see, more and more robotics and all the telemetry and things like that. I think that's very interesting, and a case where I think the food industry is really leading, a lot of things there. Like you said, it is. I've never heard that, but it is totally true. It is like a manufacturing site, like
It is. And listen, so this was a test because I asked you that question as a test, and you hit on some major points there, and I want to make sure that we're really clear on what those points are. So as we look at the trends, obviously we have a lot more data coming in, but I think that people don't think about, the high video piece that requires bandwidth there.
Yeah.
We see a lot of things happening with security footage of wanting to be able to use that footage, but not for security, but to be able to look at customer flow and traffic.
Yeah.
At FS Tech last week, there was some people that are now getting into using the video footage to look at the inventory levels and see what's being used and being able to do that. Now, I know that was a hit at FS Tech. I can tell you back in June at NRF Asia in Singapore, there were actually robots with cameras doing inventory along the shelf. That takes bandwidth. That takes the video that's there.
Yeah.
You have
it has to be autonomous. It has to stay on prem. You can't.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And then you use the word robotics, and you're right. The manufacturing where a lot of the robotics is coming today is actually in the back of the house and in smaller footprint operations where robotics can not only be a safety piece. The one thing that I did see at FS Tech, and I see this in the commercial food service segments, is sustainability. People are now starting to use the cameras to take a look at waste. Yeah. What's on the platters? Are they serving it up right? And I'm not so, these are trends. You're bringing them up. And I think we don't understand how much technology that's going to take and how we're going to have to grow because we just assume it.
Yeah. I mean, so, there's definitely more mature organizations, but once you start collecting this data, once the right person in the business figures out, wait, we have access to this data, we can trend this, we can collect it, we can analyze it, we can monitor, we can set metrics and things like that. I mean, that's what drives a lot of these new applications. It's like, then it's, well, what other data is available out there that we're not already collecting or utilizing or, things like that. And I mean, that's where it's hard to predict the future.
If we were to summarize that, though, what we'd be saying here is, yes, as they discover and learn more, as they see their competitors doing it, as they see other industries doing it, they're going to want more and more.
Yeah.
What you're doing is putting in place an infrastructure that they don't have to think about how they're going to do it. Just choose what's right for your business, and then the rest can be deployed, can be supported, much more easily because your scale is putting in the platform, and they don't have to think about that.
Right. Yeah. And you definitely nobody wants to be in the place where your IT infrastructure, which is the boring part, is holding back your business, or preventing you from deploying that next application that, is critical to your efficiency or profitability or whatnot.
So now you had mentioned earlier on, and I don't want to miss this because what I'm learning is that even smaller operations today are going international.
Yeah.
It's much easier. It's much easier because the food, the production process, the equipment, the connectivity is there. So if somebody is going international, how do you play a role in that?
Well, again, we sell worldwide. We have networks of both. And by the way, so we are a software company, but we generally do deliver a complete hardware software infrastructure solution. So whether it's working with international partners like Lenovo or all different types of we have an ecosystem that can provide the integrated hardware software infrastructure internationally. All of our software is supported. We have follow the sun support. And then we have a network of partners and ecosystems that operate internationally as well. So certainly no barriers there. I guess I will say one of the things we tend to see more internationally is network resiliency, bandwidth, reliability, latency is not the same everywhere. So a lot of the edge computing becomes much more important to not rely on the network.
But yet they want to use the same applications.
They want to be able to use They want to be able to use the same application. So, that's often a difference. You do often, because when you do start getting into the video and, customer data, personally identifiable data, you start getting into, well, we need to keep it in country, compliance and things like that. So, we factor into all those things. We give you the ability to put the data where it belongs. And by the way, there are applications that belong in the cloud. We're not saying take stuff out of the cloud. We're working with that, but there's an increasing number of applications that for a variety of reasons do need to run on premises. You need cloud-like infrastructure that you don't have to care about, under the hood. And that's really where we're, the need that we're filling.
So, as we just sort of take a look at this, so we've got the international piece, we've got the scale. I mean, it's just a great name here, right?
You got a nickel every time, It's like, yeah.
So you'll help people to scale, but you can scale from the small independents all the way up. We've got the channel that you work through. We've got the direct. We're giving people the flexibility of choice of what they want to do, best of breed or all in one. And they don't really have to be technical and technology people to be working with you, because there's the options for them to either do it themselves, choose a partner, or actually work with you to go ahead and do it. You just sort of make it easy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So a last question for you, which is, you've taken a key position with the IFBTA, and, why did you decide to join and invest in the IFBTA?
Yeah, really, it was a great place for us to kind of expand and solidify and formalize that infrastructure piece. So we had already partnered with a number of companies that were members, for example, Mako Networks and so forth, and kind of started our involvement there. But realized just the vast potential for access to customers that have unique needs, working with them on their roadmaps, their strategy, as well as the other provider partners and so forth that we have access to.
Well, so that's great because, we've always viewed ourselves as a connector there. But the fact that you're also making connections, that are on the supplier community, the industry partners, as well as the operators, really sort of gives you the best of both worlds.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're, certainly very happy to have you as a member and filling a role like that, because it's not necessarily always an area that people are focused on, but they are focused on wanting to do technology, and you're making that easier, for them. So I want to thank you. And I appreciate having Dave Demlow on today, who's the VP of Product Strategy at Scale Computing. And Scale Computing is an Allied Premier member and industry partner of the IFBTA. And we hope you've learned more. And Dave, if they want to reach out to you and find you, besides going through the IFBTA website, and besides connecting with you at one of the industry shows or through your partner channel, what's the best way?
You can check us out at scalecomputing.com. And if you want to nerd out on the technology side, that's what I do personally most of the time. I'm at David Demlow on Twitter.
Great. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you for being an important member of the IFBTA.
Yeah, thanks for having me.